What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Big Baby Jonathan here. Welcome to the latest episode of Big Baby Sports. And I got Mike Trudell, Lakers Sound Reporter. How's it going, Mike? Hope all is well with you and the family.
Doing great. I was not told there were going to be awesome graphics like this to start, baby. I didn't know you had that in your bag too, but I was very happy to see it.
Yeah, and also I got Ben Golliver from Washington Post. How's it going, Ben?
It's good to be back, baby. I would have bet that Mike would have the personalized jersey, not you. So you're just surprising us at every turn here today.
Yeah, man, I'm very passionate about my Lakers. I got my replica ring and got my replica trophy, man. Let's get into it, man. As far as the Lakers, man, the season's coming around the corner. And
Baby,
yeah,
take
hey,
a look, man. Take a look.
From 2010, man. That's the 2010 one.
Yes,
That
sir.
from nice.
Big baby, don't let Golliver distract you with his noise there. Please continue.
No, it's fine. It's all good, man. It's all good. But yeah, Lakers season's right around the corner, man. What's the expectations for this Lakers team? I'm gonna start with Ben. Ben, what do you expect from this Lakers team? I know it's a new roster, but how do you think it's going to gel in the beginning of the season?
Well, look, the Lakers have been one of the biggest stories in the league really since LeBron came to Los Angeles,
Mhm.
and I think that's going to be just taken up to 11 this year. Whether or not you consider them the Western Conference favorites or the
Mhm.
title favorites, they've got to be in that conversation. And I think really more than anything, they're going to be the biggest story in the league. I mean, you have to look at the star power. I was talking about this with Mike the other day. Imagine what we're going to be going through in media day with LeBron, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, Dwight Howard, Carmelo Anthony, Rajon Rondo. I mean, they're going to have the ability to put 6 or 7 future Hall of Famers into the same photo. That's crazy. I don't really know the last time that's ever happened. And so I think it's going to be a circus, a good circus, most likely a winning circus, and certainly probably a more stable year than last year when all the injuries hit. But you've got to keep them in that title conversation. You've got to view them as the biggest story in the league, I would say.
What you, Mike?
Yeah, baby. I think at this point, the Lakers are actually a pretty good buy low because the narrative coming into the season and from the offseason is about how old the team is, right? And I think that is overstating it, mostly because LeBron James, granted, at this stage in his 19th season, right, at age 36, but he doesn't play like that's the case. He still plays like some could argue the best player in the league. I don't think anyone would argue outside of the top couple of players. Maybe you throw Durant and Giannis into that mix. And I know that Golliver and I have spent a lot of time. Ben wrote a book called Bubble Ball, in which I don't know if he stated explicitly in the book, but plug there. But like Anthony Davis was the second best player in the bubble. Then he had 2 months of an offseason, and he and LeBron paid the bubble tax last year. But when LeBron and AD are healthy, this team has been dominant, just period. Take out whoever their teammates are. Now you add Russell Westbrook, who has never been the third best player on a team. He has been the second guy in certain spots, but like Harden was coming off the bench when he was in OKC. Then he got paired with James Harden. Then he got in Houston, of course. Then he got paired with Bradley Beal. So he's in, and there are some question marks as to how he's going to fit. But the talent addition is interesting. And when you have 3 players that are making that much, baby, it's difficult to build out the rest of the roster. But I think the Lakers have done a pretty good job, and they've got some players. Now, granted, it veers a little bit more towards offense than it has defense the last couple of years. So it's going to be a new formula that they're going to have to figure out. But let's just not complicate things too much. LeBron and AD healthy, the way they dominate both ends of the court, that's as good of a starting point as you're going to get in the league. And I'll include Durant and Harden into that mix for what their top side, upside on both sides of the court are. So I think the Lakers should be the clear favorite in the West. And we'll see how things evolve and the whole Brooklyn versus LA potential destinies. That's all great. But for now, I just think focusing on the Western Conference, the Lakers should be the one that should be the team that everybody else is chasing. And I don't know if they feel like that. They for some reason, baby, have considered themselves that they can be underdogs in a way. Like that, and that's with having all the star power that Ben mentioned with Hall of Famers left and right.
Yeah, most definitely, man. This Laker team is stacked, but I always say this on my show, man. We got to stay healthy. Because last season we did not stay healthy, and it was a disappointing season last season, but it's a new season. And this Laker team is stacked. Russell Westbrook, and here's the thing about Westbrook, man. He hasn't played with a caliber like Anthony Davis or LeBron. So he's going to be geared up. He's going to be turned up this year, and I can't wait. And he has that Kobe Bryant mentality. He don't take time off, games off. He goes 100%, 1,000% each night. And that's going to rub off on LeBron, Anthony Davis, Carmelo, Dwight. We're going to have a lot of – this Laker team is going to be full energized. And we got some young guys too. We got Malik Monk, Kendrick Nunn. It's going to be really exciting. I'm pumped up for the season. And I called it right after the Lakers got bounced in the first round. I said, this roster ain't going to stay the same. Rob Pelinka's not going to sit here and keep this roster as it is. He's going to make the adjustment, and look what happened. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm with you on a lot of that. And I'd also just really quickly add, I mean, when you look at the amount of time that they've had off this offseason, it actually feels like a break. Last year just didn't feel like a break. And I think also getting back to a full 82-game schedule, it helps you build the chemistry over the course of a season. You know, if LeBron or AD missed time last year, you're just constantly rushed, like, oh my gosh, the playoffs are coming. How much time are they going to miss? Those kinds of questions. I think this year the entire schedule is back to normal. The way they're going to do the travel and all of that is much more normal. And they're going to need some time to gel. This group will, you know, and thankfully they start with a pretty soft schedule. Mike can tell you more about that. But I think that's really helpful when you have all these new faces. You know, pretty much everybody, as you just mentioned, maybe around the two stars has changed for the last couple of years. You're going to want a month or two to kind of get right. And the Lakers are going to be in position to do that, I think, with their October and November schedule.
Yeah, so a couple things to build on Ben's points there for you, big baby. The Lakers' schedule is really soft early. They have 12 of their first 15 games at home, and only 3 of those opponents were playoff teams last year. Now, we should probably include the Golden State Warriors in that mix. They weren't a playoff team last year, but they should have been, and they certainly had the talent to, and I think that they will be this season. So if you want to say 4 there. But what that does, it might make up for all of the turnover and the fact that the Lakers are going to have to figure out their rotation. And now, let me just briefly, baby, I want to argue against my own point to an extent and kick this to you. I want to see what your take is on this. So, as much as there's only 3 players from last year's roster, right? So you have LeBron, you have AD, and then you have THT. But you do have Rondo and Dwight Howard coming back. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, plus like the guys that are coming in that are vets, like that can make up for a lot of what you think about is typical challenges in roster cohesion. When you've got vets and when you've got guys that have played with teammates before, and LeBron and AD, most of what the Lakers do is based off of what those guys do. So what do you think? How do you think about that continuity question versus what they can make up for it by having some vets and by having their 2 most important players still in purple and gold?
It's a great question, and I agree 100%, man. Rondo and Dwight coming back to LA, it's going to rub off on this team. You know, their championship experience. You know, like the young guys too, like Kendrick Nunn and Malik Monk, they haven't had that. Well, Kendrick Nunn was on Miami when they played in the bubble, but Malik Monk was on Charlotte. He didn't have that playoff experience yet. And a player like Rondo, like all these veterans that we have, are going to teach these young guys how to win. You know, it's going to rub off. And like Dwight said it best, man, he came here 100% to get back to the championship, and I agree with him 100%. And yeah, just excited for the season, man. Really pumped up. And also too, we're not old, we're just experienced. Because a fan asked Dwight on his Instagram a couple weeks ago, "This Laker team's old." He's like, "We're not old, we're just experienced." You know, the veteran guys, everybody on this roster, from Dwight to Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, had been through playoff battles and went through those situations. You know, it's going to rub off on this team, and I'm telling you right now, this team is very exciting to watch. Going to be exciting to watch this season. I'm pumped up, very pumped up this year. Go ahead, Ben.
No, I was going to say the biggest chemistry question or continuity question I think that you're going to want to answer is going to be Westbrook, because as you said earlier, baby, I mean, this is the first time he's been in a number 3 role, right? He's never played with a big as good as AD. He's never played with a star as good as LeBron, unless you want to throw 2016 KD in there. And it was a similar question actually for Brooklyn last year. Remember when they traded for James Harden? Everyone's like, is this going to work? Is there enough basketballs? Are they going to be able to balance it out? And they wound up playing so high power together when they had the 3 stars that there was enough for everybody to eat. It worked out just fine. The challenge for Westbrook, though, is going to be the spacing issue on offense, right? I mean, he is not as good of a shooter as Harden or Kyrie, and so he's going to have to find ways to be helpful off the ball because you want to have the ball in LeBron's hands. Now, he's shown the ability to do some cutting at various points to kind of attack the weak side of a defense, and he's going to have to show really good discipline with his shot selection this year. I'm looking for that from him as well. And then, as you mentioned earlier, just keep the energy up. You know, try to do it in transition. Try to play at the high pace that Frank Vogel said they expect to play at this year compared to last year. And I think good things can happen for Westbrook. But to me, he's the biggest question mark on this Lakers roster. And I think he's honestly the biggest story in the entire league. This is his shot. he's been waiting for a long time to make another deep postseason run. Ever since KD left him, he's just kind of been going from team to team to team, wanting to get an opportunity. The Lakers threw him a huge lifeline here, right? And now can he take advantage of it?
Like, you're muted.
I look at this a lot like I look at this current podcast, guys, that we're on right now. Now, some may have thought, well, hold on a second. Big Baby and Golliver and Trudell. So many great takes. How are we possibly going to fit that into one podcast? It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much insight. It's too much brilliance. But instead, we know each other, right? We're vets. We've spent a lot of time in the green room together. Yep. We know when to get in. We know when to get out. I know when to mute my mic, even though I just kept it on for too long there. I know when I need to hear more from Big Baby because we're vets in the game, guys. That's the same way Russell Westbrook's coming in as a vet. LeBron and AD, they've been around. These are not three young guys all trying to figure out who the alpha dog is. They're just trying to win championships, guys.
Yeah, most definitely, man. That's what Lakers organization is about, championships, man. We got this group together for a reason, to win a championship. You know, I keep it real, like on my channel, man. I'm keep it all the way real right now. This is a championship season or bust. I don't want to hear Laker fans say, "Oh, at least we got to the second round." No, we don't play that. I don't play that. We got to win these rings. We got to win rings, man. That's how I feel, 100%. You know what I mean?
Is there a championship to be won right now on this podcast? Can we win a championship right now, right here, me, you, and Ben?
Yes, we can win a championship. We go up against any podcast 3-on-3. Let's run it. You know what I mean? You know, the rings, man.
I need the ring. That's the thing. You guys are both showing off your hardware. Clearly, I'm the Westbrook of this crew. I've got to get one to match you guys. No, baby, I think both internally and externally, though, not just for Lakers fans. I do think when you are the Lakers, you have the history of this franchise, you have LeBron, and you have Anthony Davis. It is a championship or bust season every year. And you saw the backlash that kind of came out after they lost last year, and there was obvious reasons why they lost, right? AD's limping around the court. I mean, clearly can't play. LeBron's not right, and yet there's this huge conversation about, oh, what's wrong with the Lakers? And a lot of people wanted to see huge roster changes and everything else. I think that they welcome that criticism, and that's one way that Westbrook is really going to fit in perfectly. He does not care, he is used to criticism. He's heard it his entire professional career. And so I do think that like the stage of Staples Center, the stage of being a Laker is one thing that I'm really not worried about with him. To me, it's more just about like, can he find the right offensive role? Can LeBron find the right ways to use him? And then I think if they can solve those problems, they're going to be in great shape. If not, they're going to get a lot of heat. And that's sort of the nature of being the Lakers.
Well, here's something to think about from the Westbrook standpoint. And I want to bring Anthony Davis a little bit more into play. So Ben writes for the Washington Post. I don't think is aware of what the national narratives are, right? Like I haven't heard a lot this offseason about Anthony Davis. And part of that was because he was injured and of course didn't go through the postseason after the first round. And then the Westbrook trade and some of the subsequent moves have taken some of the headlines. But we just have to remember, and this is why I'm bringing you back into the conversation, Ben, we have to remember what Anthony Davis is on the court, on both sides of the court. And we have to remember how many teams out there are just thinking, oh, if we only had a guy who could, rotate between the 4 and the 5 on defense, switch out to guards and contain on the perimeter, block shots, shoot from the perimeter, get to the free throw line, score from the post. Like he really can do everything on the court. And he's a guy that can be a complete matchup buster. And even if you want to forecast into, all right, well, look, Brooklyn, you got to respect the talent that they have. Not only do they have the 3 stars, but they have a lot of nice supporting talent that I think they have some moves that were probably underrated in the offseason. But what do they do with Anthony Davis? And you could say, sure, what do you do with Kevin Durant? Great question. What do you do with LeBron James? But Anthony Davis physically, just by the fact that he's almost 7 feet tall, with that skill set, that is not something that Kevin Durant on his own, or even James Harden trapping, or Kyrie, that is not something that they can handle. And so that to me, Baby, Ben, however you want to get on this, I don't know if there's been enough discussion about AD and the assumption that now that he's had a full offseason, he's had the 4 months instead of the 2 months, that he should be back to where he was when he was dominating everybody in the bubble.
No, he's the matchup checkmate. I mean, he showed that in the bubble, kind of round after round, he was posing problems for everybody. And as the series would kind of unfold, you would see the other teams trying to adjust to him rather than the other way around, right? Especially when the Lakers went small, everybody's looking around and they really have no answers. How do we even match up with this group? I do think when they're going to get to the playoffs this year, Dwight's a couple years older. DeAndre Jordan's not where he was, say, a couple, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and the other options at the center. I don't love those big lineups as much as I like the big lineups from a couple years ago with Dwight and JaVale. So I think they're going to go small more often in the playoffs. But I think that's been proven to be the most deadly look from the Lakers during the Anthony Davis era. And I call it the checkmate because you would probably rather have Anthony Davis against Giannis if you're trying to keep him away from the paint. If you're trying to contest his stuff at the hoop, prevent the dunks, you'd rather have Anthony Davis and his ability and agility back there more than almost anybody else. I think if you're going against Brooklyn, you have to have athleticism, quickness, versatility, because they're going to spread you out as far as possible and go with their small lineups. So Anthony Davis is super helpful there. And he's shown the ability to be part of an effective defense against the big guys like Jokic as well. The Suns series is a great example. When Davis was really, rolling, DeAndre Ayton didn't have any answer for him. As soon as you take Davis out, DeAndre Ayton looks like a completely different player, and he's played great and having a lot of success against the Lakers centers. So I do think, the Lakers are in an interesting spot here, though, in the Western Conference because they're also benefiting from the Kawhi Leonard injury, the Jamal Murray injury. And so they're coming in, I think, more rested and more healthy than some of the other key teams near the top of that group. And Anthony Davis should be poised to take advantage of that.
Yeah, most definitely, man. As far as Anthony Davis, man, I feel like he's been putting the work behind the scenes. You know how Westbrook and LeBron be posting their videos on Instagram and Twitter stuff. We haven't really seen Anthony Davis that much. But the only thing we saw Anthony Davis this offseason was him getting married, dancing, having a good time. But other than that, we haven't seen him putting in that work behind the scenes. He's putting in that work behind the scenes, but it's just not out there for us to see it. I feel like this season, man, I'm going to stay right here on Big Baby Sports. As of September 20th, Anthony Davis is going to be in the running for MVP this year. I feel like he's going to be dominant, man. I feel like a lot of people are giving up on him. A lot of people like sports, other topics, or other shows giving up on him. Not me. I feel like he's going to have a dominant season this year. And Anthony Davis is the best big man in the game. Back to the basket, pick and pop, shoot that mid-range. You see what he did in the bubble? Today's the anniversary of him hitting that shot against Denver when he yelled Kobe, when Rondo faked it and then Anthony Davis came out.
Yeah, the Mamba shot.
So it's Mamba shot, man. And I just feel like Anthony Davis is going to turn up this season. I feel like he's going to dominate. You know what I mean? I'm excited for it.
Well, baby, you and I are on the same page, and that's why I kind of raised the question and the point about Anthony Davis, because for all of the discussion about Westbrook, if Anthony Davis comes to play to that degree, and by the way, he should, right? He should want that. He should embrace that challenge. Yeah. To me, the MVP stuff gets a little more tricky just in terms of when you have the big threes, and this happened like once Durant got to Golden State. Voters penalize that because they sort of split the vote. If there isn't one clear guy out of that mix, and LeBron is always going to, I don't care if LeBron even tries to takes a tiny step back, he's still going to have 25, 7, and 8, by the end of the game. It's just that's just what happens when he's on the court. And Westbrook, the way that he plays basketball, he is going to generate things. So what I'm thinking, as opposed to AD, worrying about specifically MVP, he should try to be Defensive Player of the Year again. And I think he's going to really benefit from Russell Westbrook in a lot of ways, because the one thing that Russ is going to do, baby, is put a ton of pressure on the rim. And if he does that, as Ben alluded to earlier, he's never played with a big man that is as good or as versatile as Davis. So he played with Serge Ibaka, not the same level of player as Anthony Davis is. He played with Clint Capella up until the point where they moved Capella. I don't know, Ben, who you would say is the best big that they had in Washington last year. You and I, we spent a little time on that. I mean, that wasn't necessarily a position of strength for the Wizards. So if I can ask this to both of you, how do you guys think that relationship evolves on the court, Russ and AD, and how much do you think that both guys benefit from having the other one there?
Man, I feel like Westbrook and AD are gonna click all cylinders, man. Westbrook, like you said, Mike, haven't had a player like Anthony Davis, versatile, pick and pop, shoot that mid-range, post up, and I feel like they're gonna fit well together. You know what I mean? A lot of people are like, oh, it's not going to work. It's going to work, man. You know, it's going to take some time, but I feel like it's going to work 100%, you know, because we got veteran guys. Anthony Davis is up there with the veterans too, but he's going to dominate, man. Westbrook is going to – you're going to see times where Anthony Davis and Westbrook are going to have the same impact defensively, offensively. You know, Westbrook's working on his game, Anthony Davis working on his game, so I expect them to be like a like I'm gonna say it because I keep it real, like kind of like Kobe and Shaq in a way, in a somewhat with the domination on the pick and pop situation. What do you think, Ben?
Well, I think the thing to watch with regard to Russell Westbrook and the big men is just if they stick with the big lineups to start. You know, we figure they're probably going to have like a true center starting next to Anthony Davis. When Westbrook was in Houston, he was much more effective after the Capella trade. So when Capella was like in the paint, kind of clogging things up, and he couldn't really shoot, life was more difficult for Westbrook. He had a harder time driving. His efficiency wasn't as good. Teams would kind of lay off of him. And it would also put more defensive pressure on Harden because all of a sudden there's two non-shooters, right? Westbrook can't shoot and Capella can't shoot. So what I'm curious to see early in the season is, do the Lakers have a solution for that? Are they able to get away playing big lineups with Westbrook on the court? And they might, because they've got two big-time stars in Anthony Davis and LeBron, who are both comfortable on the perimeter, can both command a lot of attention. And so maybe it's not as big of a deal for Westbrook with the spacing in big lineups. But then what I really want to see is when they go small, is that when Westbrook is like fully unleashed, and where, you know, if Anthony Davis can kind of hide in the corner a little bit, Westbrook can attack a completely empty paint, and all of a sudden, life is really, really easy for him. So we do want to see what does it look like in big versus small. How do they kind of shape Westbrook's minutes to get the most out of them? But again, I do think that's going to take multiple months to kind of play out.
Yep, I think that's a good way to put it. And there are definitely question marks with this group, and it's always going to happen when you put a player that has Westbrook's usage rate. And Westbrook is also a guy that has clear strengths and weaknesses, as opposed to AD or LeBron, who are like pretty good at everything. They have a couple things. They're not the best shooters in the world, but certainly capable. And there isn't so much of a defensive weakness. And like with Westbrook, we know some things like shooting, for example, being the biggest thing on the offensive side of the court. But there are some other things offensively that he can do, whether it's in the dunker spot or whether it's as a second side attacker. And if you have LeBron and AD running a screen roll on the strong side, and the defense has to shift over because they have to, because it's LeBron and AD, and then Westbrook gets the ball with a recovering defense and just puts the pressure on going to the rim, it's just really difficult to stop. Pack the paint all you want. You're just not going to be able to deal with that level of athleticism from both sides. But there's no doubt that there are questions that need to be answered. I just would feel more comfortable betting on what the Lakers have than another team in the West for this season. And then we'll see. We'll see who's healthy by the time you get later in the season and before even talking about the finals. But I just think, baby, that there's enough there that it would be, to me, it would be a mistake not to consider the Lakers the favorites in the West.
Oh, yeah, 100%, man. We're the favorites, man. We have a great group of talent, man. And let's get into some of the young guys that we have, like THT, Talent Tucker, Kendrick Nunn, and Malik Monk. How do you think those three guys are going to fit with the lineups? You think THT's going to – because we also got Rondo too, so how is this all going to affect THT's minutes and all that? Michael, we'll start with you. How do you think that's going to work?
Yeah, so I think the one place where, if you want to look at a question mark, it's the shooting guard spot. It's if you start with Ellington because you want the spacing, and that's assuming that they start with either Dwight or DeAndre and play traditional and play big, then maybe you go for the shooting. But then, all right, how do you figure out who's going to get the minutes off the bench? You've got Bazemore, you've got THT, you've got Rondo, you've got Nunn, and you even have Malik Monk. And so you can't play everybody. I think that Vogel will have an extended rotation, especially early in the season, as they figure out which of these guys fit in which spot. But there isn't an obvious choice. I do know, because I've asked Ben about this before, the guy that represents maybe the most overall upside would be THT, and also a guy that the Lakers drafted, right, that they've developed through their two-way deal. So the question is, the things that he's good at, getting to the rim, breaking guys down off the dribble, they already have that, right? They have that in Westbrook. They have that in LeBron. They have that even to an extent in Rondo. So he doesn't defend at the same level as a typical role player, a veteran role player like a Bazemore might. He doesn't shoot at the typical level like an Ellington. does. But again, it's the upside that's tantalizing there. So that's going to be super fascinating for me, Ben, to see is how Frank Vogel prioritizes what those differing skill sets are for his role players around the 3 stars.
Yeah, my big thing is I don't want THT to get lost in the shuffle, because it would be very easy to say, hey, look, we got all these veterans, a lot of guys who want to eat on this group, a lot of guys who are going, to Springfield, as we talked about earlier from a Hall of Fame standpoint. Let's just let those guys run this season. That THT's time will come. I think he's so young, and he showed such potential early in his career. You don't want this to be like a quote unquote lost season for him. I don't think it's going to come to that. But I would try to carve out a role for him early in this year, and just make sure he gets his opportunities. One way you could potentially do that is to stagger LeBron and Russell Westbrook, and maybe you're playing THT a little bit more with LeBron. See what that looks like. I would always try to keep LeBron or Westbrook on the court most of the game if I could get away with it, because those guys are such ball-dominant players. The other thing you can do is just limit the wear and tear on some of these older guys, particularly Rondo. Rondo doesn't have to play 75 games this year, in my opinion, right? Like, you could probably scale that back, rest him on back-to-backs, do whatever else you need to do. I mean, he's proven that when it's time for playoff Rondo to show up, playoff Rondo is going to show up. Remember, he got injured at the bubble and then bounced back, and boom, he's playoff Rondo. Like, he needed no ramp-up period, right? He's a smart enough player to make an instant impact. And so I would look for ways to kind of keep THT in the mix, because you want this to be another step forward to the player who he could potentially become, as opposed to a season where maybe he just flatlines a little bit. I would try to avoid that if I could.
Yeah, same here, man. And also THT's talented, man. He improved so much last season, man. And that's why, because I know there was trade speculations with Kyle Lowry. Lakers didn't want to give him up. And they saw very much potential in him. And now I see why. Don't be surprised, man, if he's going to – I would not be surprised at one point in the season now. We're a veteran team. I would not be surprised if THT starts. Like, let's say we go back-to-back and Westbrook doesn't play. LeBron, I wouldn't be surprised if THT starts throughout, like, down the line. Like if we clinch the first round home field advantage and all that stuff, I would not be surprised if THT starts and all that stuff, because he's talented. And I would not be surprised if he has, like, a very improved season, man, because Rondo's going to be under him. LeBron, Carmelo. We have talked about it, the Carmelo Anthony too. It's like this team's this team right here, man, is so many talent. We have a talent team, and we gotta see what Frank Vogel does with the lineup, man. It's gonna be probably a lot of rotations during the preseason and half the season as well. That's what I think.
Yep, you're on a big baby. I don't even know what I can add to that. You got it all summed up.
Vogel's got a great job this year, man. It's gonna be, he's gonna be busy. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, man, we're gonna get into some questions, and this question is from my boy Manny. What are your expectations for Westbrook first season in LA? Do you think LeBron and AD will like playing with him? That's from my boy Manny.
Yeah, I do. I think that they were involved, right, in Westbrook's coming in the first place. I think that it clearly was something that they envision working, and that's going to help them make it work, because it was all part of the plan. So is it a perfect fit in terms of skill sets and all that? Not necessarily, not in the way that LeBron and AD fit, but I think that they will all work hard to make it work, and I think they're all invested in it.
I'm expecting a little bit of early choppiness, to be honest, as he tries to settle in. It's going to be a completely different role he's ever played before. But usually talent does win out, like we were talking about earlier. And he's in a situation where he's often felt like he needed to be the answer for his team. And he always puts it on his own shoulders. And I think he understands, at least I hope he does, he doesn't have to be the answer for the Lakers this year. That's LeBron's job. That's Anthony Davis's job. And we could watch that play out. Maybe it takes, until the All-Star break for him to adjust. But I expect big numbers from him, because he always puts up big numbers. He's always very productive. I don't think he's going to make the All-Star team, though, unless the fans vote him in somehow, because I think it's just too crowded there with the Western Conference guards. But I think the other two Lakers stars will make it.
Yeah, 100%, man. Good question, Manny. But yeah, I feel like they're going to like playing with each other. They're both passionate. LeBron. Here's the thing about LeBron. Anywhere he goes, players go out the roof with their game. So LeBron's going to get Westbrook going, AD. It's going to be an exciting season. And real quick, man, I'm going to ask you this, Mike. Do you think triple-doubles are easy to get in the NBA?
No, they're definitely not easy to get. Okay, you have to have a certain level of just insane athleticism and versatility.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that the narrative around triple doubles is slightly overrated. I don't, the difference between 29, 11, and 7 and 21, 10, and 10 to me is 0. So, so I don't put a huge value on them, even if I respect how difficult it is to get them.
What about you, Ben? Do you think it's triple doubles are easy to get in today's NBA?
Well, they're easier to get than they were 5 or 10 years ago, but that doesn't mean they're easy, right? I mean, it's like if they were easy, everybody would do it. It's pretty insane how many times Westbrook has averaged a triple-double, but I would try to keep that pressure off of him if I was the Lakers this year. If that comes up at media day, I'm Westbrook. I totally dodge that question. I just say, look, I don't care about my numbers this year. I'm just trying to be a role player and fit in. That's how I would handle that question because they don't need him to average 10 assists and 20 points and 10 rebounds a game. They just need a good fit and a reliable ball handler and good shot selection and then good activity on defense, right? And discipline. And if he can bring those things, they're going to be in a great spot because he's going to help set their pace. So I do think because of how many points are scored, the fact that defense is not as big of a deal, and the fact that teams play much faster now than they did 10 years ago, it's become a lot easier to compile numbers. But to agree with Mike there, it's not easy. There's not that many guys get triple doubles.
Yeah, it's not easy to get triple doubles. Westbrook is like up there at all time in triple doubles. Past Oscar Robertson and all that stuff. And real quick before we get up and on here, I know Lakers have 2 roster spots left. So Mike, do you think they're going to keep those last 2 roster spots open, or do you think they're going to invite players to train camp, try to fill out that last roster spot?
Yeah, baby. So I don't have any inside info on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if they kept 14 and then waited until later in the season for various different purposes that we don't need to get into right now. But so I would think they would add a 14th spot. And there are still a couple of things, whether it's a space 5 or whether it's just another wing, although it's not like there are a ton of two-way wings. Like if you go to the Lakers website right now, Wesley Matthews is still actually on there because he hasn't signed anywhere. And, West to me would be the ideal kind of player to have at that spot where you can trust him in certain spots, but he doesn't have to play a huge role every night. So a player like that, I think would be just fine. And I don't think you need to go to the 15th player until the trade deadline.
Yeah, bring Wesley back. I mean, he should want to be back. This is why he came to the Lakers in the first place. It's probably a better opportunity to win a title for him than maybe even compared to last year. The other thing I would say is we're going to see an arms race at the trade deadline, between the Nets and the Lakers. Like all these guys gravy training. We've already seen LaMarcus Aldridge, all these other guys trying to get their rings, Blake Griffin. It's going to play out again once we get to, February. So I would keep the spot open, and I would also keep flexibility in case I needed another spot, just because you don't know who's going to shake free. And we do know, based on past history, a lot of good players are going to be looking around and saying, can I go join Brooklyn? Can I go join the Lakers? And you want to be in that kind of spot to bring that kind of talent in and take advantage of those situations.
Yeah, man, it's going to be an interesting trade deadline this season, man. It's going to be exciting, man. But Mike, Ben, thank you guys so much. Mike, where can they follow you on Twitter at, man? Give out your social media where they can follow you.
Babe, look, it's all. Don't worry about that. Okay, they know where to find me. I'm just happy to be hanging out with you. A pleasure to be on Big Baby Sports Podcast as always. All right.
Appreciate it, man. You guys take care.